What's up, y'all? Trainer Tia here, coming at you with another Instagram TV video. I've had some requests from some of my online clients to provide an intro to calories and macronutrients. Okay, there's a lot of buzz about macros lately. Everybody knows what calories are, or they think that they know what they are. But this video is to give people a foundation as to some of the major manipulations that we make on diet to change your physique. So here we go, and I've got my little cards here to help us navigate through this little video. All right, so number one, okay, quantity versus quality. All right, so there are a couple of main manipulations that we make on your diet to change your physique, okay? And in addition to timing and supplements, which are totally different topics that we can cover in a different video, your two main umbrellas of manipulation are quantity versus quality of your food, okay? And so there are some schools of thought out there that avoid tracking quantities, and they say that it gets too tedious and they prefer to just change quality of diet. This is a viable route to some results, okay? Like you could say, all right, I'm gonna eliminate gluten, or I'm gonna eliminate dairy, or I'm gonna restrict my carbs, or I'm going to cut out soda, or what have you. They change the quality of their diet without regard to the quantities of their diet. That's probably gonna get you some results, okay? But to achieve results that are long-term, that are sustainable, that are far-reaching, that will have a much greater impact on your physique, quality of food is just not enough. It is important, and eventually I get to quality with all my clients because obviously Pop-Tarts don't compare to chicken and broccoli, okay? And I'm not advocating that you eat just chicken and broccoli, all right? Let's just stay on point for this video, all right? But the bottom line is quality is obviously important, but you can't get very far without manipulating your quantities as well, okay? So first, and when we look at your quantities, the number one, the king of numerical manipulations are calories, right? So if I asked you what a calorie is, I think most people probably couldn't answer. It's one of those words that in diet and fitness that everybody thinks that they know, but nobody actually knows what it is. It's kind of like metabolism. People can't really define what that is. So a calorie is a unit of energy, right? A unit of energy, okay? And so if you're looking at calories that way, you have to eat or consume enough energy to make it through your day and your activities, right? Otherwise, if you're in a deficit of energy, yes, that's how you lose weight. But if you've watched my video on metabolic damage, that can be a slippery slope if you're too low for too long, okay? But, all right, so as a trainer, when I'm looking at a new client and I'm trying to figure out how many calories, how much energy do they need to consume every day, we start with your BMR, okay? This is basal metabolic rate. It's also known as RMR, or resting metabolic rate, okay? So, but we start with your BMR, which you can Google and calculate yourself. It's based on your height, weight, age, and sex, okay? So my BMR is probably around 1,400 based on my characteristics, okay? And so, but that number only reflects the number of calories that you burn every day as if you were awake but laying in bed all day not moving a muscle, watching Netflix or whatever, okay? It's a base metabolic rate, basic calories that your body needs to function, okay? Obviously though, we're up, we're moving around, we're doing a lot more than just laying in bed all day, okay? So we need a number that reflects our actual energy expenditure, okay? And so what we'll do then is we'll multiply your BMR by an activity level, and again, you can just Google this, and there are formulas to help you figure this out for yourself. But that's gonna calculate your total daily estimated expenditure, okay? And there's different terms, different words for these numbers, but total daily estimated expenditure, okay? That's the number of calories that we're estimating that you burn every day on a daily basis, okay? And this is our starting point for all things calories, okay? You have to have your total daily energy expenditure in order to start, all right? So once you have that number, mine's probably around, you know, all things considered, mine's probably around 3,000 given what I'm doing right now. But, okay, once you have your total daily energy expenditure, this is great sometimes. Let's pretend that you wanna gain weight, okay? You wanna gain muscle, you wanna get bigger, all right? So generally speaking, the calories that you need, it all depends on calories in versus calories out, right? You've probably heard that before. If you eat more than what you're burning, if you exceed and create a surplus over your total daily energy expenditure, all things constant, you should gain weight. Now, what you gain, lean muscle versus body fat, right? That all depends on macros and on activities, and there are ways to dial in that precision. But generally, if you eat more than what you burn, then you will gain, okay? Now, most people want to lose that I work with, right? I work with general population, and most people want to tone up and lose a little bit of weight. So generally speaking, if you eat less than what you are burning, okay, so if you go back to your total daily energy expenditure and you cut that number off and you're eating less than what you're burning, technically you should lose weight, okay? So generally that is true. If you eat less, take less in than what you're putting out, you should lose, okay? But if you've seen my video on metabolic damage and you're like most people, that doesn't actually work very linearly. Can I say that? It doesn't work in a linear fashion quite that way, okay? So that is not the case if somebody has metabolic damage, okay? And if you haven't seen my video on that, you should definitely check that out if you feel like that might apply to you. If you feel like you're dropping your calories lower and lower and you just can't seem to lose anymore. Most of my clients come in with metabolic damage. They've dieted before. They've tried the old caloric deficit and it hasn't worked. So it's not always the case that if you eat less than what you're burning or what you think you're burning or what these numbers calculate that you will lose, okay? So keep that in mind. But if you have a healthy metabolism, if you come in as an overeater, I love overeaters because they're so easy to work with. It's easy to chop some calories off and to get a caloric deficit and you will lose. It's pretty easy, okay? So that's how calories really work, right? We're always trying to figure out what are you burning and what do we need to take in order to meet your goals, assuming that you have a healthy metabolism, okay? So that's calories. That's really, that's how it works, right? It's all about generally how much you're eating, how many units of energy you're taking in, okay? But if you want to dial in even more precision, more so than just how much you're eating, we have to dial in what you're eating, okay? So this is where macros come in, okay? And so macros stand for macronutrients, all right? Macronutrients, okay? So there are micronutrients that are in the playbook as well, things like sodium and potassium and fiber and all of that. That is a very different discussion for a different video, okay? But for now, we're talking about macros. Everybody's buzzing about macros lately. And so your three main macronutrients are carbs, protein, and fat, okay? Everybody's heard those words. Everybody's familiar with those terms, okay? Those are your three macros, okay? Now, technically, there is a fourth macro, alcohol. Okay, alcohol is its own macronutrient. It's unique. It behaves differently in the body. But for the sake of this video and really for most of your macronutrient manipulation, think about carbs, protein, and fat. Okay, so a lot that we have to cover here: carbs versus protein versus fat. Okay, so as far as what each macro does, okay, I should note at this point, I do not advocate cutting out any one particular macro entirely. There are these crash diets out there where you go 0 carb or 0 fat for a certain amount of time, and that is really drastic and really dicey. I do not recommend that. Generally, a more balanced approach will be best to begin. Now, there are lots of different diets out there, high carb, high fat, low fat, that are viable and that are correct and sound. But for the most part, any diet that cuts out an entire macronutrient is probably not the best or scientifically founded, okay? So anyways, so if we're looking at all three macros, okay, so what is a carb, right? I think most people are most familiar with carbs. Carbs are pretty easy. Carbs are everywhere. So examples of carbs, right? So fruits and vegetables, what does that say? Starches, so all fruits and vegetables, all starches, potatoes, grains, and then processed foods. So a processed food is anything that comes in a box, a bag, a wrapper, a tin, a jar, a can, etc. Anything that is packaged is processed, okay? So carbs are pretty much everywhere, all right? They're easy to find. As far as what carbs do, right? Why do we use carbs? Carbs are really energy. They're your body's preferred source of energy. Now, there are plenty of diets out there, like keto, for example, ketogenic diet, which relies primarily, Atkins is another example, which rely primarily on fat for energy, okay? And there are diets out there that are not carb dependent for energy, but for the typical American diet, and for most people out there, think of carbs as your body's favorite energy source, okay? Carbs are also really useful for building muscle. So if I've got a client that wants to build muscle, we're generally going to increase carbs to fuel bigger workouts, to get more glycogen into the body, and to get people building muscle, okay? So carbs are generally energy and fuel, okay? Protein. Protein is pretty much meat, all meats, chicken, turkey, fish, all different kinds of fish, red meat, pepperoni, turkey, if I didn't say that already, but basically all meat, all poultry, so eggs as well. Let's see, what else do I have on here? Some grains and legumes, you're gonna see protein in those sources as well. So you vegetarians out there, I know that you rely on those to get protein. And then dairy as well is gonna have some protein too. So protein, generally think meat, legumes, some grains, dairy, okay? Protein is probably going to be used by your body for energy last, dead last, okay? So protein is generally used to build muscles and to support structures, okay? So if you're looking to build muscle, which virtually everybody should be, if you're looking to change your physique, you probably need more muscle. Protein, and that's why you hear gym rats talking all about protein, right? And protein gains and all that jazz, right? It's because your body's probably not going to store protein as fat, and because your muscles are literally made of protein, okay? So that's why you hear a lot of gym rats talk about high protein diets, okay? Final macronutrient is generally fat, okay? So fat is involved in a lot of cellular processes, okay? And it's used as a secondary source of fuel. If you're familiar with the fat burning zone, you've seen them on your cardio pieces of equipment. The ketogenic diet, Atkins diet, again, these are high fat dominant diets. Fat can be a really good source of energy as well in the presence of either aerobic activities, or in the presence of a low carb diet. Fat is a solid energy source. It's also involved in a lot of key cellular processes. So any diets out there that are dire low fat, there is a consequence to those. So remember, fat doesn't make you fat. Okay, I think that's like a common thing that circulates around the rumor mill in the fitness world. Fat doesn't make you fat. A caloric surplus will make you fat. Okay, remember that. None of these three macros are the devil. Okay, so examples of fat: nuts, seeds, dairy, oil, avocado. There's a lot more examples of that, but fat is important. Please remember, fat doesn't make you fat. Okay, you need fat for a lot of key cellular processes. Okay, so these are your three macros, and these are what they do. Carbs are energy, protein are muscles and structures, and fat is also energy and cellular processes. Okay, so you need all three. All right, it's also worth noting here my formulas. All right, so in MyFitnessPal, which is what most people use to track their food, it's going to calculate grams or track grams of each macro. Okay, and to convert from grams to calories, which is, remember, our main key manipulator when it comes to quantities. Multiply your carbs and your protein by 4. Okay, so 4 calories per gram. So if you have 100 grams of carbs in a day, that's 400 calories, right? And same thing with protein. Now fat is a little bit higher. I've got here 9 calories per gram for fat, okay? So in multiplying and converting from grams to calories, fat is 9. So if you had 100 grams of fat, that would be 900 calories of fat, okay? So keep that all in mind. Those are your macros. That's what they do. That's how you convert the formulas, and that's why you need all three, okay? So, you know, I've kind of been hinting at this, but so you're probably wondering, all right, fine, I get the macros to you, but like, what should I do? And what's the right diet out there? Is it Atkins? Is it keto? Is it paleo? Is it macros? Is it South Beach? There's so many diets out there, and people are always like, Tia, what's the right one? And the answer is that all the major diets out there are correct. They're all correct. They all have a place. They all have a time. They all have a use. They all have an athlete or a goal that fits that diet exactly, okay? So they're all right. I mean, and I know that probably doesn't help you decide which route should you go, okay? But it's just meant to shed light on the fact that there is no wrong diet for the most part. They all have a time and a place, and it all depends on you and your goals and what you want and how bad you want it, right? So it's important to note once again that caloric intake is controlling, right? That's the control. So what I mean by that is, generally, you could do the macros almost any way, but if you have your calories set in the right place, in a surplus or a surplus or a deficit, that is your main controller. Okay, so A lot of people get real bent out of shape and they want to do all this complex shit with their macros that they don't have to do. If you get the calories right, you're going to head in the right direction, and the macros can be close. And I know that I'm going to get some flack from that from the macro people, but you know, maybe that's true for advanced clients, but for the general population, novice and intermediate clients, generally, if you get the calories right, the macros can have a little bit of a looser range, okay? So in picking the right diet, which diet is right, you know, it's worth noting, there's a reason why people like me have a job, right? It's complex. That's like going to a doctor with an illness and saying, well, what should I do? Can I fix it myself? It's, you know, maybe not on medical grade, maybe it is, but it's complex. Your body's complex, and it requires a deep understanding of how the puzzle all fits together, right? So I've got one more little paper here, and it's things that I look at as a trainer in figuring out what is the best diet for you. Hi, you want to make a cameo? Hi, everybody. Calories and macros. We're giving an intro. Okay, so yeah, macros. We love macros. Okay, so you know, it's worth saying that there's a reason why somebody like me is on your program versus getting a computerized general recommendation that's not specific for you, right? It's complex, right? So just remember that. In trying to pick the right diet for my clients, I look at a lot of different things, and it's a moving target. Remember this, your body's constantly changing, your levels are changing, your goals are changing, your performance is changing, your stress and your sleep and your water, and you're traveling, and there's so many variables that can change what you need at any given time. But generally, in setting out to figure out what kind of diet is gonna work best for you, number one, diet history. What worked before, right? If you did Atkins back in college and you saw great results, that's a really good indicator to me that, okay, that's probably gonna work again for this person. There are unique biochemical markers and idiosyncrasies that you have as an individual that make you predisposed to maybe have better success on Atkins than I would, right? I don't like low carb very much. I can't go quite that low, at least Atkins low, okay? But number one, diet history. If you did some crazy diet before and you saw really good results, assuming that the rest of the program was reasonable, start there. Don't reinvent the wheel, okay? Number two, your goals, okay? If you wanna build muscle, that's probably not gonna get too far on an Atkins or a keto diet. If you wanna lose fat, however, maybe those two diets would work better for you. You know, are you a performer? Are you trying to do a triathlon? What are your goals, right? Because there are general formulas that must be sustained and must be utilized in pursuing their constants, right? So a triathlete, I haven't read a lot of success stories of a triathlete doing Atkins or keto. They do exist. There are those people out there that are very, very precise and can pull it off. But for the most part, triathletes eat carbs. For the most part, people that want to lose weight, they cut their carbs. For people that want to build muscle, they generally eat more protein, right? There are certain constants that we apply that are pretty general and pretty correct as far as just general trends as far as what your goal is, okay? So goals, huge consideration in picking the right diet, right? Blood type, okay, so this one is a little bit controversial. If you've read Eat Right for Your Type, I know it's anecdotal, it's theoretical, it's not hard science, but what it says is pretty much 80%-ish correct as far as predicting an ideal diet for a client's physique, okay? So if you know your blood type, check out the blood type diet theory. There is that 2 out of 10 of my clients where the blood type diet does not line up with the ideal diet for them, so there are outliers. You may not be exactly on point with the blood type diet, but for the most part, if I know a client's blood type, I'm gonna start with all other factors considered, what a blood type diet would recommend for them, generally speaking, and that tends to work pretty well. It has an 80% success rate, so if you know your blood type, check that out, and maybe take that with a grain of salt and start that out. So next, okay, so if you have food allergies or a controlling condition, where you have to have more of a certain macronutrient or less of a certain macronutrient, diabetics, vitamin D deficiency, food allergies, somebody's allergic to gluten, we're probably not going to get that many carbs, things like that. If you have a controlling condition, then you have to listen to that. There's not a lot of ways around that, right? And on that note, for my friends who are diabetic, there are some interesting theories out there about high carb versus low carb, but again, it goes to show that there are individual differences, and Everybody's different, and it's worth doing your research to figure out what could be best for you and experimenting, right? So controlling conditions, food allergies, really important to note. What does that say? Oh, client tolerance. Okay, all right, so if you want to lose weight, but you really don't want it that bad, you're probably not going to survive a low-carb diet, right? So, you know, if you really want to make a push on your physique, you have to be willing to eat something that you don't like or not eat something that you do like, right? So that's a huge consideration. If I have somebody who is a 7 out of 10 in terms of motivation, then I'm probably not going to expect them to adhere to a really strict, unpleasant type of diet to reach their goals, right? So it always comes down to, in every fitness endeavor that I have with my clients, what do you want and how bad do you want it, right? If you're willing to only give 7 out of 10 effort, then prepare for 7 out of 10 results. That's 70%, that's a D on my scale, okay? But it's just, you know, and that's fine. It's important to just note, how much are you willing to give up and how much discomfort are you willing to tolerate? That is huge in picking the ideal diet. Somebody who doesn't have a lot of discomfort tolerance, then they're probably gonna go with more of a balanced diet, embracing the fact that they're probably not gonna get as much results. But you get what I'm saying on this. Okay, this is a really fucking long video. I hope this is helpful for you guys. And if you have any questions, and if you're interested in this stuff, I'll bet you have a million questions. Remember, there's a reason why there are professionals like me who are on the case, on your case, looking at your individual puzzle, right? It's complicated, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's a moving target. Like I said, things are shifting constantly. And so if you have questions or you're interested in exploring an individual diet plan that should go with an individual exercise plan as well, reach out to me. I'm always looking to work with people who are interested to learn. So hope this was informative. It's long. Take care. Talk to you guys soon. Trainer Tia out.